Alone in the desert, the house that saved my life, the sun hung like a copper coin in the endless sky, casting long shadows across the desert floor. I pulled my truck to the side of the dusty highway and checked the map one more time. 3 days into my cross-country drive from Phoenix to Denver, I had decided to take the scenic route through the back roads of Nevada. It seemed like a good idea at the time. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I've always been the kind of person who chooses adventure over convenience. After losing my job at the marketing firm, I figured it was the perfect time for a fresh start. My sister Emma lived in Denver, and she had been asking me to visit for months. So I packed everything I owned into my old Ford pickup and hit the road. The GPS on my phone had lost signal about 50 miles back. The paper map showed a small town called Willow Creek just ahead, where I could stop for gas and maybe grab a cold drink. But as the miles stretched on, there was no sign of any town. Just endless desert, scattered with sagebrush and the occasional Joshua tree reaching toward the sky like twisted arms. The engine began to sputter. I pressed the gas pedal, but the truck lurched and coughed. The temperature gauge was climbing steadily into the red zone. Steam started rising from under the hood, creating ghostly wisps in the dry air. "Come on, girl," I whispered to the truck. "Just a little further." But the old Ford had other plans. With a final wheeze, it rolled to a stop on the shoulder of the empty road. I sat there for a moment, listening to the ticking of the cooling engine and the vast silence of the desert. I grabbed my water bottle and phone. Though the screen showed no signal bars, the sun was already beginning its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I had maybe 3 hours of daylight left. That's when I saw it. About a quarter mile off the road, nestled between two small hills, stood a house. It looked abandoned, with weathered wooden siding and a sagging porch. But it was shelter, and right now, that's all that mattered. I locked the truck and started walking across the desert floor, my sneakers crunching on the dry earth. The air was still and hot, filled with the scent of sage and something else, something almost like vanilla. As I got closer to the house, I could see that it was older than I had first thought. The paint was faded to a soft gray, and the windows were dark. But the structure looked solid. The front door was slightly ajar. "Hello," I called out, feeling a bit foolish. "Anyone home?" Only silence answered me. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The interior was dim and cool, a welcome relief from the heat outside. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight streaming through the windows. The house was small but well built, with a living room, a tiny kitchen, and what looked like a bedroom in the back. Someone had lived here once, and not too long ago. There was an old sofa covered with a faded quilt, a wooden rocking chair, and shelves lined with books. On the kitchen counter sat a ceramic pitcher filled with dried wildflowers. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, but the house felt peaceful, safe. I set my water bottle on the counter and explored a bit more. In the bedroom, I found a trunk at the foot of an iron bed. Inside were quilts that still smelled faintly of lavender, and underneath them, a leather-bound journal. I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity got the better of me. The journal belonged to someone named Margaret Rose Thompson. The first entry was dated 3 years ago, moved to the desert house today. Harold always said this place would be perfect for someone who needed to heal. He was right. As usual, the silence here is not empty, it's full of possibilities. I flipped through more pages, reading about Margaret's life in the desert. She had come here after her husband, Harold, passed away, seeking solitude and peace. She wrote about the wildlife she observed, the spectacular sunsets, and the way the desert taught her to find beauty in simplicity. The last entry was dated just 6 months ago. "Time to go live with my daughter in California. This house has given me everything I needed: peace, healing, and hope. I pray it will do the same for the next soul who needs shelter here. I'm leaving supplies in the pantry and fresh linens in the trunk. The solar panels Harold installed still work, so there's power for the well pump and lights. May this house be a blessing to whoever finds it." My eyes filled with tears as I read those words. This wasn't just an abandoned house, it was a gift. I closed the journal gently and looked around with new eyes. Sure enough, I found the light switches worked. In the pantry, there were canned goods, crackers, and even instant coffee. The small refrigerator hummed quietly, powered by the solar panels I now noticed on the roof. As the sun set, I made myself a simple dinner and sat on the front porch, watching the sky transform into a canvas of deep purples and glittering stars. For the first time in months, I felt truly calm. The desert's silence wasn't lonely, it was healing. I spent the night in Margaret's bed, wrapped in her lavender-scented quilts. When morning came, I felt more rested than I had in years. A water delivery truck happened to drive by around 10 o'clock, and the driver, a kind man named Joe, was happy to take a look at my truck. Turned out it was just a blown radiator hose, an easy fix. He even had a spare hose in his truck. "You're lucky you found this place," Joe said as he worked. Margaret Rose was a special lady. She always said this house had a purpose beyond just being a home. By noon, my truck was running perfectly. But as I packed my things, I found myself moving slowly, reluctant to leave. I wrote a note and left it on the kitchen counter, along with some money for the food I'd eaten. Dear Margaret Rose, your house saved my life in more ways than one. Thank you for your kindness to a stranger. I'll never forget this place, or the peace I found here. Sarah Mitchell. I added my phone number, just in case anyone ever needed to reach me. The drive to Denver took another day, but I carried the desert's peace with me. 6 months later, I received a call from Margaret Rose herself. She had returned to check on the house and found my note. I knew someone would need that place, she said, her voice warm with satisfaction. That's what it's for, to remind us that even in the most desolate places, we can find hope. She was right. The desert had seemed empty and threatening at first, but it had given me exactly what I needed, a moment of stillness in the chaos of my life, and the reminder that sometimes the most beautiful gifts come from the most unexpected places. That abandoned house didn't just shelter me from the desert heat. It sheltered my spirit and showed me that even when we feel most alone, there are still people in this world who care about strangers, who leave lights on and doors open for weary travelers. Margaret Rose's house taught me that home isn't always about the place you're going. Sometimes, it's about the place that finds you exactly when you need it most.